Off before we begin, welcome everybody to another one of our annual Tech Talk discussions, and thank you for joining in on today's event. This event will focus on the topic of the increase of female targeted crime around Greenville, North Carolina, as well as near or on the campus of East Carolina University, and then the onset feeling from community members that there's been a bridge between concerns from students and the ECU Police Department. I'll be your moderator for today's event. My name is Chloe Easton, and I'm the editor-in-chief of the East Carolinian. I will present a set of questions throughout the event to our guest panelists. However, audience members are free to pose any questions at any time or leave any comments they would like in the chat box below. If you would like to ask a question yourself aloud, please leave a request in the chat box below, and we'll try to get your question in there as well as we can. So now I will take this time to introduce our panelists and allow them to take this time to give themselves an introduction of what their position is and kind of what they do for the ECU community at the department. So starting off, we are joined by Deputy Chief of Police Jason Sugg.
Oh, yes, hello, I'm Jason Sugg, the Assistant Police Chief at ECU. Really, first of all, I'd just like to say welcome to everybody who's logging in to participate, but I would actually like to thank East Carolinian for partnering up with us, and so to speak, and doing something like this. We do a variety of roundtables or community, discussions and things like that. We've done them for a while, but this, I guess, when we just started talking about women's safety specifically for that particular group, I thought it was very interesting. I don't recall that we've done something as focused like this before, so I thought it was a very interesting concept and a topic of discussion. Of course, I think we all need to have anyway, but I thought it was a great opportunity for us to kind of partner together. So thank you to the East Carolinian for allowing that to happen and kind of going along with that and letting us participate. But again, thank you to everybody who's participating today.
Yeah, of course, and thank you so much, for agreeing to have this discussion. We all think it's super important, and we're really happy that you guys worked this out with us as well. So I'm really happy to be here with everybody. Okay, so moving on, next we have Master Police Officer Kim Bell with us today.
Hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming and joining this meeting. I work with the Community Affairs Unit. Part of my duties are just going around campus and actually doing assessments. I also do a lot of the training for safety programs that we have on campus: active shooter, sexual assault training, domestic violence, different things that we have that people want training on. I go out and do it for the faculty, staff, and students. Thank you all for coming.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here with us today. All right, and then next we have Captain Chris Sutton with us today as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Sutton. I'm a captain with the police department. I have patrol, which is the largest group of officers that work within our police department, the 4 different patrol squads, and then also special events and public information. Appreciate this opportunity to have some conversations and look forward to your feedback.
Great. And thank you so much again as well for being here today and having that time to have that discussion with us. We really appreciate it. And then we also have Sergeant Stephanie Carnevale with us, if you would like to give an introduction as well.
I don't think y'all can see me. My camera is saying it's not launching, so I apologize for that. I'm not sure what the issue is, but at least I can hear y'all. But I'm Stephanie Carnevale. I'm a sergeant here with the police department. I've been here almost 22 years, and I am over the crime prevention unit. So as Kim Bell said, we do a lot of safety training generally. So this is a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts and that we deal a lot with. So we're happy to be a part of this discussion.
Perfect. And thank you so much as well for being here to have the time to talk about that with us, because it's really important to us and as well as the community, obviously. So let's get into some questions for today, starting off. So kind of just giving some background to our audience before we get into some specifics. This discussion originally arose out of concerns posted on a Facebook group called Safety Gals, which is a platform in which female students and community members have post occurrences of harassment, theft, incidents such as stalking or experienced misconduct in the area or near campus. So When the East Carolinian reached out to the department and it had never heard of such a platform with mass concerns, how do you believe students are able to bridge the gap between the communication among ECU PD and those individuals that they are meant to serve? And then this question could be answered by any one of our panelists, or a single individual can answer this, or we could talk about this together as a group.
I'll start off. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm sorry, it's hard. I can't see too well. I just wanted to say that I didn't know about this group until recently. I think as a department, we try to do a really good job as far as utilizing media type to get information out. But I had just recently heard about this group. And just to let y'all know, I actually joined it myself so that I could kind of keep up with what's going on there and any concerns that may come in, which obviously would impact how we do our jobs and keep that line of communication better. And I will make sure that my people in my area do that as well, so that we have better, every more means of communication that we have is the better. So I just wanted to add that I did that a couple weeks ago.
Just to sort of, I guess, to piggyback a little bit on what Stephanie was saying, I honestly was totally unaware of, we're all aware of social media. We know that people discuss issues on social media in general terms, but I was not aware that there was a specific group on Facebook that discussed, safety issues that are really relevant for that particular population. So it was I wasn't really surprised that it existed. I thought it was very interesting, and I had not heard of the group before. So I was actually glad that it came up in conversation, because it's, for me, and for us at the police department, social media is something that we can tap into. And to be brutally honest, the policing industry as a whole in general, historically and traditionally, we don't do very well generally in keeping up with trends when it comes to how people communicate. It's gotten a lot better in the last, 15 or 20 years with everybody's on social media, whether it's professionally or personally. So I think we've gotten better at it. But even though that, we've gotten better at it, we haven't perfected it, of course, and we don't sit and kind of monitor all the social media that we can. We do some stuff, we're on Twitter and Facebook, and I think Instagram and some other things. And a lot of that is promotional, where we're promoting safety awareness, and we're trying to interact with people about safety related issues, and to gather the information that we can gather over social media, and to use that to not just our benefit, but also to the benefit of the community. So for us, I think, part of it is that we definitely need to do a better job of tapping in, or at least keeping up with social media and how groups kind of coalesce around themselves and around their specific issues, whatever it may be. For example, we're talking about women's issues today, but I know there's other groups, other populations out there that probably are doing the same thing, and they talk about safety issues that are totally relevant to them. And it's not that it's irrelevant to other people, it's just, it might be specifically relevant to them. So we need to do a better job, I think, on our end, of tapping into those niche conversations, so to speak. But talking about bridging that communication, I think we do a decent job in general at ECU within the community, whether it's staff and faculty or students, of trying to communicate. Sometimes there's awkward conversations, or what I like to call like deep conversations, and some people try to shy away from that. And we try not to shy away from it, because these are important conversations I think people need to be involved in, and it might seem awkward and it might seem uncomfortable for some people, but we still need to have those conversations. And for example, if there's something that we're falling short, or if we're lacking in some ways of communicating, like the social media thing, and it can be brought to our attention, we might feel a little awkward, like, yeah, we kind of missed the bus on that one, but at least now we're aware of it and we can get involved. And for example, Stephanie personally tapping into that Facebook group, for me, is I really appreciate her doing that. But we try to be active in social media, and as these technologies kind of grow and expand, we try to work with those mediums to try to interact with students. And we understand some students are really kind of hesitant to communicate with the police department, especially publicly. We totally get that. We have the Live Safe app that we try to encourage people to use. There is an anonymous function on that. So if people feel comfortable being anonymous, there are ways to do that. For us, the big thing is having the information. It's not always like who's giving it to us necessarily. It's just if there's something we need, so we can step in and try to help a situation or help a student or help a group of students, getting the information is our number one priority, and it's less of an issue of who gave it to us generally. But as long as we're getting the information, whether it's social media or a phone call or an email or whatever it is, we want all that stuff if there's information that we need to have. So I'll wind it down because I know I've been talking for a minute, but yeah. So whatever we can do to tap into it, let us know. We'd love to be involved in the ways that students communicate.
I don't know if you want to add anything in there, Kim, really quick. I know you had something you wanted to say at first, or.
No, it was Carnevale. He went out and spoke. I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. No, I think definitely going off of what you mentioned, Jason, I think that one thing that with the lack of communication, it might be from the students, and they've not always had maybe the best experience with police in the community. And I think once they get to campus, they're viewing the department as another city police department, and they don't realize that because they're on campus, they also understand the connection and that thing there that bridges us as ECU community. And I think sometimes students forget that, it's like they're really here to help you as a student. They're not just looking at you as some random other person. You're a part of our community and we're here together. That's something that you feel or there might be a lack of trust coming to the department with certain information, or it might turn around in some way to get them involved in something that they don't want to be in. So would you say that's something that you see a lot coming up when you talk to students like that? Or how do you feel we could put kind of an end to that and build not so much communication, but the trust to lead to the communication in the process?
That's a great question. So I would first of all just put it out there that the majority of that trust building, this is Jason's opinion, needs to be done on the part of the police side. Historically, traditionally, everybody has seen everything's happened in the news, George Floyd, all this stuff, police officers, sometimes not so clear, but sometimes it's extremely clear that police officers are involved in misconduct, excessive force, killing people who, certainly don't deserve to be killed, but the use of that force results in somebody's death and it's unjustified. So we've all seen that stuff. So I would just put it out there, really the onus is on the side of the police department, generally speaking, to afford people opportunities to have trust in us. I'm not really kind of comparing us to other police agencies, but I do agree with what you said that, when you come to a large university that has its own police department, which is not unusual, you'll find these police departments all over the country. Just about every major university has their own police department. Our departments tend to be a little more service oriented. In other words, we're not spending all of our time running from call to call to call. We do have calls, but in the meantime, we might have students who need, it's not necessarily, they don't need the police to deal with a criminal issue. Maybe they weren't victimized, maybe they weren't, whatever it may be, but it could be something that's totally not related to criminal activity whatsoever, but they still need help, right? And it might not even necessarily be a police officer's help that they really need, but generally speaking, we are usually the first people or the first resources that they're able to tap into. We're 24/7 operation. They can call us any day or night, even out on the street. When you're coming up as a child, generally you're told, if you need help, if you see a police officer, they can help you. But I think a lot of people look at police departments as in an essentialist view, police do what they do because they are the police, right? They write tickets, they take people to jail, they do X, Y, and Z. And I think in the midst of that conversation or that perspective about a police identity, I think a lot of the service side is lost, not just to people on the outside looking at police, but even on our side of the table. In the things that we do, a lot of times we get caught up in the same essentialist view about what we are supposed to be doing as police officers. And a lot of times we forget that we are also doing the service side, and it's not just the enforcement side. So, one thing I would throw out for everyone to just kind of consider is that, a lot of our time is not spent on the enforcement side. In fact, I would say the majority of our time is really spent on the service side. where, you know, someone's stuck in an elevator, or someone, they might be having a medical thing and they really need a medical resource, but we're usually going to be the first resource that can get them whatever they need beyond that first contact. So, you know, to me, that all ties back to that whole trust issue, is putting ourselves out there, sometimes in a humble manner, that we need to let people understand that, you know, we are not simply here to do enforcement, even though that's that essentialist view that people, and TV doesn't help us with that, because you can watch a TV show and this is what cops do, right? But yeah, there's a lot of service that goes into it, and a student can call us for just about anything, and they say, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z. And if we're not like the primary resource to really give them that, whatever the assistance is, we generally know who it is, and we can redirect them immediately, or we can send an officer and figure out what they need, and then go from there. So a lot of the times we are the first face that people will see at ECU if they're dealing with an issue, whether it's trauma, whether it's related to crime, whether it's related to, you know, I ran out of gas in the middle of 10th Street and I need help pushing my car, or whatever it may be. But a lot of it is service oriented. And I think we all, and police included, lose a lot of that vision, just because we have that view, this essentialist view of what police are supposed to be doing. And I do think it's changing. And I think the fact that we are really, I think in general, the policing industry across the country, but us specifically in our agency, we have really tried to make strides to really diversify our employees, because us traditionally and historically, who do cops look like? They look like me, right? They look like Captain Sutton here. So we've done a good job of that, and I think that's part of it. We want to reflect our community, not just in values and mission, but we want to reflect them physically, you know, and socially, and the way that we look and the interactions that we have and all that stuff. So trying to continue down that path, I think is it's the best foot forward for our community to say, look, yes, this is our police department. They're within our community. We work within our community. But the trust issue, and I understand totally, if you look at the media across, you know, as a national or even sometimes a local issue, it's hard to rebuild or to build trust at times because of things that we do, or something that an officer does. And people, they don't forget about that stuff. So the trust thing, a lot of it's on our side. And, you know, I think the things that we do within our department, the services and the things that we do for the community, I hope resonates a little bit with the trust thing. So, but I understand people have bad experiences, and it really puts a bad taste in their mouth at times, and I totally understand that. So, but, you know, if we make a mistake, let's talk about it. And I know it might be awkward. It might be awkward for us especially if we're the ones that made a mistake. But I think owning up to that and then having a conversation about it and then moving forward is really probably sometimes the best things that we can do. But I understand the trust thing, and I do think that it's really on our side for the majority of that, to put ourselves out there and give people chances to trust us.
I think you're 100% right, that students don't really understand that ECU Police Department is there for also service issues or helping students when they really need it. And speaking just from my experiences, if I wasn't so immersed in the community, I would not know that, because I was in a situation where I needed help on campus, but it wasn't an emergency. And I didn't know there was a non-emergency number for that reason. And I don't think a lot of students are aware of that it's not just, you know, criminal activity, like intense situations. It's like, here's another line for you in case you just need help. Like, I got locked out of the office and I needed someone to open the door. And I was like, at first I was like, no, I'm not going to call them, but you're a student. They're here to help you regardless of what the situation is. So I think that's on the mark. I think that's what a lot of students may consider today. I don't know if anybody else has any input from our guest speakers today on the topic, or any other comments.
This is Stephanie Carnevale. I would just say, kind of reiterate what Chief Sugg said, but our role as in crime prevention area is getting out into the classrooms, getting out into the community, talking to community groups, and we highly encourage the individual groups to have us come speak to their people. It starts right from orientation in the summer, where we try to get out there, get that information available so that they know. And I can tell you from having done this for so many years, you're right, a lot of people do come in with preconceived notions of what our department is due to their own personal experiences from where they live. But the satisfying part is when we go into a classroom like that, we actually have these conversations with these students and start to build these relationships with them, then they learn that it is a whole lot different. You know, we do have the essential functions, but we also are, like he said, very service oriented. And the biggest thing, and it's been hard with COVID, we have been doing some virtual stuff, but obviously COVID has kind of thrown a wrench in some things as far as getting out into as many classrooms as we normally do. But we work really hard to get out to those specific groups and classrooms and co-ed 1000 classes, because most people do come in here without all that knowledge. So hopefully, you know, the fall semester gets back to somewhat normal. We'll be able to do even more of that. But I think that learning process is kind of what we need to do and continue doing, and especially in my division. And then the officers that are on patrol actually do go out into the residence halls and do programming and those types of things. Because I think if you can put a name to a face, and it makes officers a little more personal, then, you know, they're more apt to call us for those things that, like you said, you didn't think it was an emergency, you didn't want to bother anybody. But that's what we're here for, and that's really kind of the message we're trying to get across. If you need us, call us. But obviously that's a whole lot easier when you have that trust built, or you have those personal relationships from going out into the community. And so we really try hard to get out into those classrooms as much as we can, and to target specific groups, fraternities, sororities, groups like y'all's. Like, those are really, really good ways to get that information out. So we're going to continue to do that, and hopefully be able to do more and more of that once things kind of get back to whatever the new normal is.
No, I know. I remember when I lived in the residence hall, they had the ECU PD would come in and talk to us about certain situations where, you know, if you were drinking, if you had the friend call and say, hey, we're having an issue, you know, whatever that system was called. And there's certain examples of things like that, where if you're in a situation and you call just to get help, then there won't be any penalties for the person, like other people involved, and things like that.
That's the amnesty policy on campus
Mhm.
related to alcohol incidents, which basically came about because students were dying because people were afraid. You know, this throughout the country, different universities has happened where they were afraid to call because they were afraid they were going to get a drinking ticket or this or that. But it's a policy where we're encouraging them to actually call, and that amnesty, you know, will allow them to kind of ease their minds that we're not worried about writing them a ticket. We're worried about the individual who may end up dying or having, you know, severe medical conditions because of it. And those are the types of things that we usually talk about in different places, and that's great that you picked that up. But that's really, really important, because that happens, you know, I'm sure quite often, where people second guess themselves, students that are in these situations, but we don't want that to happen. Obviously, that can go bad really, really quickly. But those are the kind of things that the average student probably wouldn't know unless they went to a program, unless they, you know, got a relationship with an officer and actually had conversations. So that's why we try to do that as much as we can, because that's really, really important. Obviously, that saves lives. And I just want to add one thing. I don't know how much time we have, but since this is a safety group for women, are you familiar with our RAD program?
I don't believe I am.
And that's something that, obviously, due to COVID, we've not been doing it recently, but we're hoping to get back to that. But that's a free, just so you guys are aware and can kind of pass the word around. It's a free self-defense course for women that we have. We also have a men's one, but the women's tend to be a little more popular as far as how many people sign up for it. But it's a free self-defense course that we teach free of charge to all students, faculty, staff, anyone that wants to do it. We usually try to do it 2 to 3 times a semester when everything gets back to normal. But it's a 4-night course, and it teaches upper body, lower body, self-defense, ground defense techniques, a whole mess of stuff, but it's all completely free, and it's a national program. And we have multiple officers that are trained to teach this to students, and it's very, very popular among the females. So something to think about once, maybe next semester, hopefully when things start to get a little more on the normal side of things. But that's a free service that we offer, and it's very much about empowerment for women, and, you know, giving them some basic skills to kind of maybe feel a little more comfortable walking around, those types of things. So something to consider down the road for people from your group or any other group that you might know of.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that, because we were actually talking in the office about some of the women that work at Pyramida One taking a self-defense class. So I know a lot of women will probably be interested in something like that. And that's kind of gears me into the next question, and kind of going back to the topic on female safety in general. Besides that, now that there is some awareness at the department of the group and the rise in female targeted crime, and so what are some more plans that the department can do or have in mind to ensure that voices from women in particular are being heard, to make sure there's a push start to increasing activity, or what are just some basic essential things that women can know for remembering safety when they're on and around your campus? I know we mentioned that Stephanie, you joined the group, and then we have the defense class, but are there anything else that people can be aware of, especially women in general, during this time of an increase?
I think basic awareness of your surroundings is huge. I can't tell you how many times I've run into individuals in the past, like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, females, especially coming back from downtown by themselves, or, you know, intoxicated and not really knowing what's around them.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we always recommend is, if you're going to go downtown, go with people and come back with the people you left with. And that often ends up being part of the issue is, you know, they'll go down as a group, and then this one will go this way, this one will go that way. So I think situational awareness is huge, not just on the weekend, but anytime. Being aware of your surroundings, not having 2 earpods in your ears where you can't hear things around you. Basic safety type stuff. Walking through campus is relatively safe. We really don't have a lot. Most of our issues are downtown or the streets off of campus primarily. But learning basic, you know, being cognizant of basic safety things, whether it's locking your vehicle, closing your windows, something as simple as that. In your residence halls, not letting anybody in that is not with you, or that you don't know that they're actually, you know, a student. And sometimes people are afraid because they don't want to like cause any whatever, and they're uneasy and they don't know who this person is, and people will try to slide in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do that, you know. There's a lot of little basics. I mean, that's your home away from home. I mean, that's your home while you're here. And you wouldn't want anybody just walking in your door. So, and again, some of the residence halls are close to downtown, those types of things. So I think situational awareness and just being cognizant, not being nervous or scared, but being, you know, kind of just aware of what's around you when you're walking. But I would definitely suggest, you know, nighttime, weekends, going as a group, or at least as a pair,
Mm-hmm.
and coming back as that, you know, and utilize any kind of ride services that there are out there, which are multiple. ECU provides a lot of free stuff, rather than driving, obviously. There's a whole lot of stuff out there, but I think the biggest thing is just basic situational awareness and being cognizant of what's going on around you and paying attention. Goes a long way, believe it.
Yeah, I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've been driving on the grid, the area where students tend to reside near ECU, and just seeing you know, one girl walking alone at, like, late at night and stumbling around, just no one's with her. And a lot of the times, you know, I stop and I'm like, do you want me to drive you home, or where are you going? Like, who's with you? And majority of the time, it happens all the time, and no one's with them. And, you know, it's sad because it's not something that women should have to constantly worry about, but it's unfortunate that it's the reality that we live in. And I think it's important for them to remember, you know, you have to have someone with you. You have to let people know where you are. Like, it's a lot of self-conscious awareness as well, even though it's unfortunate that we shouldn't have to do that. But I don't know if, Jason, you mentioned that one thing that we could do is to ensure that groups are still given spaces and to have their voices and things like this can heard, or how do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that? Or
Yeah, well, you know, I think you mentioned a few minutes ago about making sure that, you know, students, particularly students, but anyone in the community, that their voices are heard. You know, and we certainly recognize that historically groups have been marginalized, persons of color, women, you know, LGBTQ, and I totally get that. We get that. And the last thing that I think that ECU would want would to continue to see these groups that have traditionally and historically been marginalized to continue to be marginalized, because opportunities are not given to those groups, but anyone in general, but specifically these groups that have been marginalized. We don't want to see them, these groups, continue to be kind of pushed aside. And I think, like this particular platform, opportunities, even in this case, is virtual. In the past, this probably would have been like a live roundtable. We've done a number of those, but I think opportunities like this, where students, in particular students, their voices can be heard about issues, going back to the comment I made earlier, the issues that are specifically relevant to their personal safety or their safety concerns or their educational concerns or whatever it may be, making sure those spaces are there, making sure they're accessible, making sure they're available, and making sure they're regular, quite frankly. And I think doing these roundtables, and I know the East Carolinian does a series of these. We've done some in the past fairly regularly about a variety of issues, whether it's, race in the police or safety issues in general or whatever it may be. And we've had generally very good experiences with all of them. So I think continuing to have these discussions and these face-to-face, you know what I mean? I think that's one way that we can go about doing it, is to ensure that people's voices are being heard, that concerns are being expressed, and that the university in general is being responsive to what they're hearing from the community in general, but specifically groups who have very relevant and specific concerns about their own personal safety. So that's kind of what I meant about making sure those spaces are there, whether right now they're virtual for a little while. Hopefully they'll get back to like a face-to-face thing, because I think it's very productive to have these sorts of information sessions or discussions, whatever you want to call it. But just really quick to kind of add to what has been said about the personal safety thing, a lot of times, especially on campus, violent crime on our campus is generally very rare. But we do have crime, thefts, for example, assaults. We've had some of these things. And I think that a lot of times someone who is intent on committing a crime, it's a very risk/reward kind of decision for that person. Does the reward outweigh the risk, or does the risk outweigh the reward for whatever the circumstances may be? And adding to personal safety conversations, everything that Stephanie was talking about doing is totally, spot on. The self-awareness, but also not making it easy. If you're coming out of the library at night, walk with a friend. If someone's looking or someone's watching, they're looking for maybe some cues that maybe I can get away with this, and that reward is there versus the risk. Certainly increase that perception of risk for that person. And it's not just, as an individual, but the institution tries to do it. For example, the blue light phones that we have, a lot of campuses, I know I've talked to several of them over the years, they're getting rid of their blue lights. Well, ECU is not interested in getting rid of their blue lights for a couple of reasons. For one, they can actually upgrade the platform and add cameras, public space security cameras, which they've done on a lot of them. But the ability to use that button that goes directly to 911 is still there. But the other thing is a perceptual thing, and it is really like a security posture. So anywhere on campus, if you're walking around, and not just for our community, but say someone comes on with the intent to commit a crime, they see these blue light emergency phones. Everybody pretty much knows, well, I'm either on or right around ECU's campus, and could be getting watched somehow. So it's also a security posture. So that's another reason that ECU hasn't gotten rid of their blue light phones. They're functional, they're very practical, but they also have that perceptual purpose that people coming on campus hopefully will hesitate before they try to do anything to any of our students or staff or faculty. So there's a lot of other things that I could get into, but there's a perceptual thing, there's some practical things, but everything Stephanie said was really good. So.
Yeah, with the blue lights, I know obviously ECU is very confident in those, and they're on campus, and I know they're on the outskirts of campus. Do you think that it would be something to consider expanding the locations into the grids, since there's been such an increase of crime? Because that seems to be majority of one of the locations. And my next question will get into another pretty populated area with crime for women. But would that be a possibility to kind of expand those into that area, like, not just like uptown, the lining, but into the, the neighborhoods of where, students are walking at night, students are going home, students are going to campus from heavily populated?
Yeah. So it's kind of a mixed question. So no and yes. And part of the reason that I say no is because ECU cannot establish that telephone line or that pole on a piece of property that they don't control or own. So, there's a few pieces out there that, yes, they could. Once you get out into the grid, you got a lot of private home ownership. The city, however, there's a possibility that the city, if they could partner with ECU possibly to look at doing a project like that. And this conversation actually came up a couple of years ago. And there are some property rights issues that come along with that would really cause ECU to not be able to do that on a broad scale. I think the better angle would be to try to work with the city and see if that there's maybe some public spaces strategically located where they could actually do that. That would tie into the police department there at the city would, I think that would be more helpful, and that probably will get a little more traction. So there's property issues is really where the issue comes up with that.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking, because I know there's private ownership, and then they have the company, the landlord groups and stuff like that all down there. So I knew there'd probably be some issues there, but I know since that's a place that students normally are kind of like, I wish there was more stuff down there to kind of help us out to see how that was. But I know there was something in the chat, Chris, that you mentioned that I wanted to kind of capitalize a little bit. You said, don't allow yourself to be the victim, refuse to be the victim. Now, can you give us a little bit more on that statement? You know, some people would say they don't always have the self-confidence or the strength to not let themselves be the victim. So can you talk a little bit more about on that issue?
Absolutely. It's important to try to arm yourself with as many tools in your toolbox as you can to help you to be prepared when you're walking, particularly at night. Try to walk with others, as we've mentioned already. A lot of people, and I've seen it play out, particularly over the last year, as I've had more time where I've been out on the weekends because of working to try to keep our large gatherings reduced. But you see a whole lot of people that walk with these telephones in their hands, and they're a complete distraction to them. And they're focused on their telephone and who they're texting or communicating with on Snapchat, and are completely unaware of who is watching them or around them. And so it's so very important to be focused on your safety and knowing who's around you, who's watching you, taking nothing for granted. I've put in the chat some information about our Live Safe app. If that's not something that you've downloaded or you're not familiar with it, I've also attached a link to be able to read up on that. It's a free service that the university pays for. It has different features that you can use, such as a Safe Walk feature, where you connect to the police department, or you could connect to another friend that also has the app, and they can monitor your walk from, say, the library to your location in the grid. So it's kind of like having a blue light phone that you have on your telephone with you as you move around. You can call or text the police department directly from that app, and our dispatchers get it instantaneously and can respond to you. You can send pictures or video. Another thing that we've seen play out is when a crime occurs, if you're either a victim or a witness, oftentimes there's a delay in reporting. And so if you're either a victim or you witness a crime or you see something that's concerning, reporting that right away helps us not only in response, but then also trying to control someone else from becoming a victim for a similar incident, because there's unfortunately a lot of predators that are out there, and they're just looking for opportunities to make our students victims. And that's something that we want to try to control as much as possible. And while we do a really good job of that on campus, we see more problems with that off campus. And again, that's because of the distractions that we allow ourselves to pull our focus away from just being aware of what's around us.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I want to direct some of that into some of the comments made in the chat box really quick from some of our guests that we have here. So Sarah commented that, Sarah J said she was never afraid to walk alone at night or bike around with somebody else with her, but when she came to Greenville, she noticed a really big difference in the environment. And we have a comment from Katie Fromm, who I believe is speaking for a lot of female students here, and I know that's one of these this comment is something that's stemming out of the group that, this discussion today is, how are boys being taught to act if we are having to put in all this work on our side, is what Katie Fromm says. Now, I think that's one thing that this community, this group is kind of just fed up with. And I think that's kind of just a casual question we have just in general that we would kind of like some response from, or just something that I feel they think is very prominent that we need to talk about.
I think I'm picking up what you're putting down as far as how are our boys being taught. There have been platforms similar to this, forums or meetings that have been held with different leadership on campus. Dr. Lathan Turner has had some of these in the past where they're opened up to our young men that are on campus, whether they're Greeks or in other student organizations, and they have some relationship building opportunities, explaining and showing and helping them develop, because when you come to a university, it's not just about your education and your degree, it's also about developing into a young adult and maturing into what those next steps in life, where they're going to take you. So there are and things that are out there that have been utilized in the past. Unfortunately, like a lot of things, the pandemic has slowed a lot of that from being able to occur face to face. Some of those may still be happening virtually, but there are some things that have been in place in the past that have been utilized.
Yeah, I think I haven't heard anything recently going on, but I think I remember hearing about something like that, like a program directed towards that group in general. Because, unfortunately, not a lot of people come to college looking for education, but they're not always looking for morals. And sometimes that's something that they need. So I think maybe bringing back some of those programs like that, or maybe is something that the department can get involved in, would be kind of an advantage to women from this group, or just community members from this group, or this discussion in general. I don't know if there's any more comments from our guests that they would like to leave about that topic, but please feel free to do so. But moving on, does anybody have any more comments about what has been said so far before we kind of shift into another question?
Now, I just want to add that I was part of Dr. Turner's group that he did, the last one that he did over in the student center. And it was a really good experience for me as well. But I think for the young men that were in there, just so you're aware, there were some pretty deep discussions that came up. And we had several officers from our department that were part of that, male and female. So we kind of got both perspectives. So I agree that more of that would probably be a really good idea. And that was a really cool program that Dr. Turner put together. But I think if we could do more of that, that would be great. But there was some really, really good discussion that came out of that, and eye-opening on both sides, from the male perspective and the female perspective. So I definitely think that that's a missing piece that could help quite a bit. I agree with you on that, but I just wanted to let you know I was part of that.
Yeah, that definitely is something that would be very beneficial and really cool to be a part of that discussion as well, to kind of hear more of like the personal side of stuff. But that'd be really good, I feel like, for everyone and involved.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so kind of just shifting here. Okay, chat. All right, so there have been a few cases, just kind of shifting topics a little bit here, where females have reported incidents to the police department, and some individuals have claims that they don't hear follow-ups on the crime that they have reported, or hear more about what the police have done to investigate the situation farther or find a solution to address their concerns. What will ECU PD do to help women feel like their reports, once they do come to the department, are not going to waste, and that crimes that are actually being looked into? Because this seems to be kind of a reoccurring statement from individuals like, I went to the police, I made a report, but I never heard anything else afterwards. So what's missing there? Like what can be done to solve kind of that situation? Because that's a lot of what we hear on our end. We're like, well, that's kind of odd. We're not really sure why.
Are you talking about, I'm just trying to, so are we talking about like individual reports to the police, or are we talking about like the Clery, like the safety of the crime alerts that go out?
like individual like reports. Like if something happens, like say an individual is in their home on the grid and they were walking home at night, they called the police, they saw someone stalking them or something was happening, and they filed a report with the police, and they were like, we'll look into that for you. It's been filed. We'll have it on here. We'll investigate that. But they never end up hearing anything afterwards, or they're never received a follow-up and are just kind of dissolves or disappears. And I think the question from them is why is that happening, or why does that happen, or what can I do, or what can they do to make sure that does not happen?
So a lot of it depends. So I would actually go straight to like the jurisdictional part of it. So if it's something that happens out in the grid, most likely 99% of the time it's going to be the city police department that is actually dealing with that particular case. And if that's one of those situations, I'd have zero footing to like discuss or to talk about, because I have no idea what their stats or their investigative, situation. I just don't know. I can tell you, speaking for the ECU Police Department, it's in our policies that officers are even on like theft situations, that something that someone might consider to be, a relatively lower end crime. There's expectations about follow-ups. Now, the more serious crimes, like if we have a sexual assault that's reported to our police department, we deal with it right then and there. We have people on call. We do a number of follow-ups. We actually have protocols that even go up to and including the district attorney's office. Every sexual assault case that we get is investigated, even if we have a victim, and sometimes we do, and for very justifiable and individual reasons that they don't even want the police involved in that situation. And maybe it's an acquaintance, someone they know. They just want to use like the administrative side of things through Title IX to deal with that situation. They don't want to take it to court, or they don't want to go down that road, which is totally their prerogative. But even in those cases, we consult with the district attorney's office on all of those cases. So it's hard to answer that question. I can only speak for, like our police department. If it's something that happened out in the city or in the county, or if it happened in another location away from ECU and it was a different agency that took that report or was investigating, I have no standing to speak on their situation or what happened, or if they messed up or any of that kind of stuff. But if it's reported to us, yes, our expectation is that follow-ups will be conducted. And I can assure you 100% the person that we task with the vast majority of our most heinous cases, like sexual assaults, is a very, very thorough and very strict person in terms of how they follow with certain things. And again, even if there's a case where the victim's not interested in the police help, we still consult with the district attorney's office on every single one of these cases. So if there's something that somebody was missed in terms of a follow-up, that they needed something like that, and certainly let us know. But it's kind of depends on where it happened and what happened and who's investigating. So I'm not sure if it's something that happened in the city. I don't have the answers to the questions from another agency, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else wants to elaborate on that. All right. Yeah, I know it's a lot to do with specifics when cases come like that, but I know it's just one questions that, that we hear a lot on our end, like, well, this happened. I'm not really sure what happened after that, after we're trying to figure out, on the sources and what happened for our story. But I figured it got down to specifics in the case and who's dealing with it and the location and the level of it additionally. But all right, just kind of moving forward here, we approach the last 10 minutes or so of the discussion. I know that one topic that I did want to bring up that's been one of the most popular concerns and most popular posts, unfortunately, in the group Safety Gals and just kind of in other groups on Facebook, has to deal a lot with sex trafficking in the area. Women have reported, cases of going to, it seems predominantly to be the locations and the strip where Target is in Greenville, or Publix right there. Now, obviously these locations are, in the city outside of ECU, but what is happening is it's a lot of just female students. It's a lot of female students. And, they're going to the shops, they're being approached by random people, they're getting asked really weird questions, they're getting asked about their informations, they're being followed to their car, they're being boxed in by other cars, they're walking down from their apartments and noticing tape on their vehicles, like their vehicles are marked. So there's been a really bad increase of that in the area, and it's targeted to these female college students. Now I believe that's kind of the reason why that's increasing here, because of our population, and unfortunately these types of people are coming to these locations because of that. Now, what is something that women can just do, or we can do in general because of this? Because this seems to be the number one occurring issue that we are afraid of right now, in blunt speaking terms.
Well, one of the things is, so I'm not aware of any cases like that have been reported to us, or any kidnapping cases or anything like that. I know I've seen, just like everybody else in the media, you know, it seems like every few months you see a story like this in Greenville and people are concerned. The last couple I've seen, it seems like the follow-up on that was it turned out not to be what people were really worried that it could be, which was like the sex trafficking, things like that. One of the recommendations I have, and I know some people, like you mentioned earlier, about being a little hesitant to call the police for something, like, well, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I don't know if I want to bother the police. I promise you, you are not, absolutely not bothering us. If students, and in this case, women in particular, have a concern that they are either being followed, stalked, harassed, whatever it may be, if they feel like they have some kind of evidence or there's something going on, or they've seen behaviors from other people that make them think that someone's targeting them for whatever it may be, any kind of crime, even just for harassment, or just making you feel freaked out. If it's the same guy, for example, that keeps coming around and standing at the edge of your driveway, staring, trying to, well, looking through your windows or whatever it may be, if even behavior like that, is totally fine to call the police and say, look, there's a creeper hanging around my neighborhood, whatever the situation may be, I really want to talk to an officer. And or if it's out in the grid, generally probably the city, but it could be us. If we're riding by and we get flagged down, for example, just having that face-to-face contact with a police officer and say, look, this is what's going on. You know, I know it might sound a little weird or a little funky, but here's my documentation. Here's everything I've seen. And I really, really need to talk to someone. I need, you know, a police car riding through here on the regular, or whatever it may be. Totally willing to do these things. If people feel like, especially if it's associated with a property, you know, whether it's an apartment or whatever it may be, if there's things going on, so look, can you just like do checks, like patrol checks, or do whatever you need to do? We can have cars riding through there really regularly. That's one thing that we can do. So don't be hesitant to call the police. Even if you feel like, well, I just don't think it's an emergency. Yeah, it's kind of weird, maybe some coincidental things, whatever it may be. Document the things for sure. You know, put it in your phone, on your notes, or whatever you need, whatever's easy for everybody to do. And don't be hesitant to call the police if you feel like you're in a situation that's unsafe, or it's increasingly getting unsafe. And especially if you see someone or someone's hanging around that's really bothersome, and it's making you feel worried for your personal safety, don't be hesitant to call the police and just look, I need to talk to an officer about a stranger in my neighborhood. I feel really unsafe, and this person's been hanging around, whatever it may be. Don't feel hesitant. Call the cops. Say, look, I need to talk to an officer face to face, and make the officer understand this is why I feel unsafe. And either, you know, if there's something a little more substantial that they can look into, that's great. But even if you don't feel like there's substantial stuff for them to look into, so to speak, you can still have that conversation and ask for additional patrols in your neighborhood, or whatever it may be, and communicating with your neighbors, if you know them or trust them, and say, look, we've all seen this person, or I've seen this person, be on the lookout for this person, whatever it may be. You know, that coupled with some of the things that were talked about already by Stephanie, for example, and I think it's a really good kind of solution to respond to a situation where you feel unsafe. But don't be hesitant to talk to the police, or ask to talk to an officer in person, face to face, and explain all these things. And so make the police understand that they need to keep an eye out for the neighborhood or the target area, whatever it may be.
Yeah. I think a big thing is, I think a lot of people are afraid of being doubted because of the situation, because I know I've had my cases, and other people have come forward and talked to us and been like, I just thought, you know, like, what if I'm completely wrong? And then I'm saying this about this person and I'm making all these accusations, and it does something to them. And it's like, well, what if you are right? You know, it could be completely different. So I think that's a really big part of it. Just being hesitant and feared of being doubt. Because I think that also comes into play from realizing that ECUPD is also here for the service aspect, because there's been some cases where people may have experienced with, citywide departments and stuff where, they haven't been taken as seriously, or they've been marginalized or stereotyped or something like that. So I think that's a big part in it, and that comes into the whole conversation we had on service and trust and things like that. I don't know if anybody has any other comments on that, or if anybody who joined in, if they had any other similar experiences like that in the area that they would like to talk about or share.
I do have a question that I wanted to address about outside people coming in and bringing crime to the area. I know, given we are a public university, you can't really stop people from, inviting their friends, especially during holidays and, times during football season and stuff. How do you guys mitigate crime when you have outside sources coming in?
That's actually a really good question. So if everyone up here, you can go to our police department website at ECU, and you can actually look at our crime logs. And I think that I don't know if they indicated online or not. So when we do a crime, we have to do a daily crime log. And I would dare say the majority of individuals that we deal with are not even ECU students. So, for example, if we have over a weekend, let's say we deal with 10 things that we have to report in terms of crime stats, those people, their names and their status as a student would be listed, student or non-student. And at least 50%, usually a little more, 60, maybe sometimes 70% are not even ECU students. Now they might be, maybe they were passing through and just, wrong place, wrong time, and we're doing something they shouldn't have been doing, for example, whatever it could be. But there are times when people come to visit. It's not unusual. They come from out of town to visit their friends at ECU, end up getting caught up in whatever it may be. So and you're right, being a public and open university, it's very hard to kind of mitigate like who's here at any given time. If they're not doing anything, they have every right to be here on a public university. So one of the things that we do is, if we do get, say, a complaint about someone, if they're not affiliated with the university, if they cause a disruption, if it was substantial enough, we do have the ability to ban people from ECU. And we do that on occasion. I'll give you an example. Just within the last couple of weeks, there's a gentleman who's not affiliated with ECU, he's not a student, staff, faculty, or anything, was basically hitching rides on the transit bus. Now that by itself might not be that big of an issue. However, over time, this person was causing disruptions. They were arguing with the bus drivers, they were arguing with other patrons on the bus and things like that. And one day, transit called us and said, it's just too much. We need to do something about this person. So we went and had an interaction with that person. It was a fine interaction, but we banned that person because of the disruptions. And if someone comes here and they're not affiliated with ECU whatsoever, if they cause a disruption that's substantial enough, of course, if they victimize someone in our community, that's just a given. But if there's other things they can do. We've actually had to ban, ex-spouses, things like that, where they came to someone's place of employment, there was an argument, that sort of stuff. So we have ways to try to mitigate. We do, because it is a public university. We try to weigh each situation. So, okay, does this person need to be banned, that sort of thing. But it's very difficult to control who's coming and going. But, one thing that the community can do to help us is that, if you're inviting someone here, try to take accountability and responsibility for that person. Stay with that person. Don't just kind of like cut them loose in the dorm and that sort of thing, which that's, housing has their own policies. But if they cause a disruption, the student themselves might not have an issue, but it could certainly kind of make them look a little bad, if you know what I mean. But it's very hard to mitigate. I don't know how to mitigate it other than we have these mechanisms like banning and stuff like that in place. If someone causes a disruption, we don't try to prevent people from coming here. If they come here, as long as they're treating our community with respect and they're doing the things they need to do and not causing that disruption that's substantial enough, then there's no problem. They can come and go however they feel like they need to do. But so it's very difficult to mitigate being a public university. Private university, just different situation, but because it is public university, they have every right to come here. We try not to, stand in somebody's way or to prevent them from doing whatever. As long as they're not causing a disruption, they have every right to do it or to be here. So.
I don't know if anybody else has any questions they want to ask or situations or experiences they want to share before we wrap up things, or if anybody wants to add anything else to the discussion.
I don't have anything to add. The only thing I would ask is that I know the East Carolinian does like these periodically, I guess. If there was a way down the road, and not just for the East Carolinian, but anybody here, if you have a group and you wanted to do like a roundtable with the police department, to reach out to us and let us know, because we would love to continue to be involved in these things. And we are not afraid to talk about awkward or deep issues. You know, if someone wants to talk about race relations or whatever it may be, because that's obviously always a big topic nationally, locally. We don't shy away from that stuff. So if people want to have those conversations, we are more than open to having conversations about all this stuff. Me personally and others here that I work with, we are very open to those conversations. We don't shy away from them. More than happy to have them. So please, you know, if there's, whether it's gender issues like we're talking about today, whatever it may be, by all means, reach out. We would love to have these conversations with anybody in the community.
Yeah, we would. I know us at Tech would love to continue to do things like this with the department, just to try to help the community and, you know, the transparency and everything like that, as well as help build the trust between everybody, and then just the relationship with the department and, you know, the media in general on campus. So that would be, you know, great. And then as well as, you know, reaching out to other organizations, I think that'd be perfect. But I think that is about it for everything today. So thank you for everybody from the ECU PD department for joining us today. We appreciate you taking out the time to have the discussion with us. And thank you for everybody who joined us, for sharing your concerns and asking your questions. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone who joined, and this discussion will kind of help guide us in the direction to protecting our community, you know, a little bit more elevatedly and efficiently as we continue to do so. So thank you, everyone. I believe the recording will be up, Cherie, on our YouTube or our website later at piratemedia1.com/East Carolinian. And then you can also find a full recap of the event later on this evening there as well. And it will be posted on our socials additionally. So thank you, everyone, once again. And I will go ahead and end the link as people logged off. I hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Everyone for participating.
Thank you.